An Illinois Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthin, member of the House Oversight Committee. Thank you for being here, Congressman. Knowing what you know, and I don't know how much you or your staff have gone through, how would you characterize the importance of these emails and where they fit into your larger investigation?
I think they're very important, and I think they just raise the question of why is the White House not releasing the rest of the Epstein files. I think now more than ever we need to see the rest of those files. We need to understand exactly who is implicated in them. And today we're going to see Adalita Grijalva sworn in, and she'll be the 218th signature on the discharge petition, which will then compel legislation to come to the floor, which will force the White House to release these files.
So let me ask you about something specifically, because the Democrats released a relatively small number before the Republicans released about 20,000 more. And we just heard Ken Delanian reading it. Of course, he knew about the girls. He asked Ghislaine to stop. Is that in some way implicating, or is it exculpatory?
Well, as you know, Donald Trump has repeatedly said he had no knowledge of this child sex trafficking ring. So this particular email would seem to suggest otherwise. In addition, your other emails that you pointed out are deeply disturbing, too, especially the one about him spending hours with a victim in Jeffrey Epstein's home. And I think in that same exchange, Ghislaine Maxwell then chimes in expressing similar sentiments as Mr. Epstein. And so all of this just raises the question, what else is in the files? Now, Jeffrey Epstein's estate is going to produce more documents, so we'll learn more from them, too. But we need to see the full Epstein files at this point.
So, again, as you just pointed out, Ghislaine Maxwell is represented in these files. And again, according to Jeffrey Epstein, he asked Ghislaine to stop, meaning Donald Trump. But yesterday I spoke to an attorney who represents 11 Epstein victims, and I want to play for you what he said about Maxwell.
I don't believe my clients want her to have any more spotlight, any more of a platform. She's a convicted child sex trafficker. What more could she possibly say? I don't believe she deserves even to have a hearing. She doesn't deserve to be the center of attention. She deserves to be behind bars, rotting where child sex traffickers deserve to be.
He's arguing against having her testify before your committee. What would you say to him?
Well, look, I think that she should come before our committee, but only after we get the file so we can actually cross-examine her properly. With regard to the survivors, they deserve access to the files. We need to do justice by them. Many of them don't even have access to the files in which they're founding their trafficking. And so for their purposes, for doing justice to them, those files need to be released. But also for the legislative purpose of preventing this from ever happening again, we need to get those files as well.
You went to Harvard Law. Do you believe there are any legal implications here for the president, or is there something specific you're looking for in the Epstein files that you have not seen?
Well, I think that I don't want to speculate as to what else is in the files. However, with regard to these emails, one of the questions that kind of pops up is, when Jeffrey Epstein says that he knew about the girls, what does that mean? Did he know about specific acts that were committed involving those girls? Did he lie at any point about his knowledge about those acts to law enforcement or anyone else who might have questioned him? A host of other questions arise as well. But for right now, we need to know more information. We need to know more about what's in those files, whether it implicates Donald Trump or anyone else. But the point is, we don't have enough information right now.
I do want to get your reaction to the statement that came out from the Republicans on your committee. I'm going to quote it here. Why did Democrats cover up the name when the estate didn't redact it in the redacted documents provided to the committee? It's because this victim, Virginia Giuffre, publicly said that she never witnessed wrongdoing by President Trump. Democrats are trying to create a fake narrative to slander President Trump. Shame on them. How do you respond?
produce the rest of the files, produce everything in your possession. If you really believe there's nothing to hide, then produce everything else so we can actually understand the full context of what's going on with the Epstein files and this child sex trafficking ring. Look, there are possibly dozens of people who are in our midst today who are implicated in these files. I mean, the victims came forward, the survivors came forward and said that there are people today who are part of the cover-up, and we want to know who they are because they may be preying on others. And so that's why it's so important that we get access to these files and get to the bottom of what the heck is going on with this child sex trafficking ring. Why is it that these survivors still haven't gotten justice after 20 years since they were first abused?
Of course, this comes just ahead of what we believe will be later this afternoon, Adelita Grijalva's swearing in. We know she intends to sign on to the petition, forcing a vote on the release of the Epstein files. So do you foresee any problems with that? And if not, what's your timeline do you think is reasonable to expect the release of the Epstein files?
Well, so first of all, the White House is actively trying to remove people from that petition. So, there are Republicans who joined that petition, and it's a bipartisan discharge petition, and the White House is trying to get them to basically take their names off. So we'll have to see.
And you know that for a fact, Congressman, have you had conversations with Republicans that they're getting pressured by the White House to do that?
I've heard this secondhand from credible sources. If the signatures remain and we get to 218, then at that point, the legislation would have to come before the House within a prescribed period of time. I think it's like 7 to 9 legislative days. Then it would go to the Senate. That's where I don't know whether Republicans are going to do the right thing and allow this to come to a vote there. And of course, the president would not sign this without possibly being overridden if he vetoed it. I think at this point, however, there's going to be tremendous pressure on the White House to produce more of these files, which is in part why this discharge petition is so important.
Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthin, on an incredibly busy day at the Capitol, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Thank you. And joining me now is MSNBC legal analyst and civil rights attorney Kristen Gibbons-Fedden, who was the prosecutor in Bill Cosby's